Once again, Iraqi Scuds are no match for the U.S. Patriot missile system. The anti-missile missiles knocked out 9 incoming warheads in the skies over Saudi Arabia. Their intended targets, Dhahran and Riyadh.
This is a special Desert Showdown edition of News 4 Texas Night Beat.
Good evening, I'm Howard Ballou.
I'm Janice Glynn. Barbara White is on assignment in Germany. We'll be hearing from her a little bit later. But first, according to the U.S. military, Iraq fired 10 Scud missiles at Saudi Arabia, and all but 1 were destroyed by Patriot defense rockets. The stepped-up missile attack Sunday night and early Monday, Middle Eastern time, came as Allied forces continue to pound away at Iraqi targets. So far, the Allies have flown 7,000 combat missions in 4 days of war. Iraq launched 3 Scuds at Dhahran, and all were destroyed by Patriots. 3 hours later, 7 more Scuds were detected, this time heading towards Riyadh. 6 of those were destroyed. 1 was allowed to fall harmlessly into the sea. Officials could not explain what caused a large crater spotted by journalists in Riyadh. The first Purple Heart of the Persian Gulf War has been awarded. A 21-year-old naval petty officer was wounded by Iraqi shrapnel on Friday. But wounds will certainly turn to casualties when the ground war begins as frontline troops start the push into Kuwait.
As Barbara White shows us from Germany, Texans are on the scene preparing for just that eventuality.
These buildings in Wiesbaden make up the largest Air Force medical center outside the continental U.S. In recent months, the facility has played an important role as events unfolded in the Persian Gulf. Since troops were deployed to Operation Desert Shield, more than 1,000 servicemen and women have been sent here for medical care. Now the wait is on for the first casualties of Desert Storm.
Well, if we do see casualties, of course, they'll come to Wiesbaden. As you know, in the past, the hostage release has been through the medical center here in Wiesbaden, and everybody here is prepared to take on what casualties there may be, and hopefully it'll be a small number.
Desert Storm casualties could arrive here at the U.S. Air Force Hospital in Wiesbaden in a couple of ways. They could come in by helicopter, or they could come in on something like this. It's an ambubus, and it carries about 82 patients. The wait for casualties is accompanied by a heightened sense of security against the threat of terrorism. Air Force troops here are pulling special duty to protect this American medical center.
Well, we're starting to check vehicles that come in the gate like that. We're, like I say, we're checking more identification from people as we're searching bags that come through the gate from the pedestrians. That's basically all I can say.
If our forces engage in a ground war, the number of American casualties is expected to grow. And there are plans to convert this center to a full-scale operation devoted solely to the care of Desert Storm casualties. Barbara White, News 4 Texas, in Wiesbaden.
At least 7 Allied airmen, including 2 Americans, are reportedly being held as prisoners of war in Iraq. Night Beat's Phil Alvarado says at least 12 crewmen from 8 aircraft are reported missing in action. Familiar memories of terror for former POWs right here in the Metroplex.
American and Allied pilots head for another air attack on Baghdad. Allied forces hit targets with uncanny precision as Iraqi troops fire up the sky. Not all the planes make it to home base. For the pilots, the dread of being captured by the enemy. In Dallas, State Representative and former Air Force flying ace Sam Johnson remembers.
We need to put up a lot of prayers for them, because I know when you first get shot down, it's the fear of the unknown that gets you probably more than anything.
Sam Johnson spent 7 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. He is angered by reports that American and Allied POWs are being paraded through Baghdad streets and apparently forced to speak out against the war.
To my wife and children, I miss you very much. I am in good hands and being treated well.
American Allied forces have captured at least 23 Iraqi POWs. The U.S. promises humane treatment in accordance with the Geneva Convention, which also binds Iraq. Back in Dallas, Sam Johnson believes treatment for American and Allied POWs may be anything but humane.
Their thought processes are totally different from ours, and it would not surprise me if they were involved in some torture.
Johnson says one consolation is the POWs may not be harmed and instead used for propaganda to slow down or stop the war. Representative Johnson believes the country should ignore Iraq's attempts at propaganda and instead continue hammering at Hussein to achieve a quick end to the war. In Dallas, Phil Alvarado, News 4 Texas, Night Beat.
And Phil tells us the Iraqis say they'll abide by the Geneva Convention that governs treatment of prisoners of war.
Israelis are still feeling the jitters tonight after 2 Iraqi missile attacks over the last 3 nights. News for Texas reporter Steve Stoller called his cousin today in a suburb of Tel Aviv. Anand Stoller lives just blocks from where a missile hit the city Thursday night.
So tell me about the mood. What is the mood in Ramat Gan tonight?
You can be in many wars, as we were, but you never get used to it. And of course, when you are quite passive, you know, because the Israelis are used to attack and give back, but not sit and wait for the bomb to come.
Anand Stoller calls Tel Aviv a city of tension, but he says he expects it to slowly return to normal tomorrow when people start going back to work. Anand, his wife, and 3 children were not injured in either attack.
Dallas Jews converged on a local synagogue tonight to offer prayers for peace and protection for the Jewish state of Israel. Steve Stoller says the special service was a show of solidarity in the Jewish community.
They came from temples and synagogues throughout Dallas, a mixture of Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox Jews. Security outside for the service was tight. Inside, a show of patriotism, first with the U.S. national anthem, and then a rendition of the Israeli national anthem, Hatikva.
Though fired at Tel Aviv, those missiles pierced the heart of every feeling Jew.
Aftershocks of the Iraqi missile attack on Israel are still rumbling in the Jewish community. One rabbi told the congregation it was a miracle of biblical proportions that no one died in the attack. Arnie and Janice Sweet are praying for their daughter and grandchildren who live in Israel.
Every time the sirens go off in Israel, I think of my daughter and her babies, 2 and 4, and what they have to endure.
Jack Kleeman is a former soldier in the Israeli army and a Holocaust survivor.
The feelings today is, to me, my heart is crying what's going on.
For others, uniting together was therapeutic.
It meant a lot to me just to come out here and be with other people who cared, other Jewish people who cared.
Members of the Dallas Jewish community are united behind Israel and the United States. They say they're hopeful their prayers will be answered for a short and victorious war. In Dallas, Steve Stoller, News 4 Texas.
And not only were synagogues full tonight, so were churches this morning.
Reporter Ken Kapp says worship services give North Texas families a way to share feelings and faith.
Congregations all over North Texas turn to their faith and friends on this first Sunday of war. Highland Park United Methodist modified its message for the Gulf crisis.
As it has been put so beautifully, there is nothing too great for God's power. There is nothing too small for his loving care.
Marilyn White spent her church morning organizing children's activities, including a special session on talking to your kids about war. All this as she worries about her own son, a helicopter gunner in the fight.
You know, I think it's going to get much worse as the casualty lists begin to come in, and I think there are going to be many more people touched by this than realize it this weekend.
White called in psychiatrist Jerry Lewis to talk to parishioners whose kids wonder when bombs will drop over their house.
Kids, until they get to be, 9 or 10 years of age, don't appreciate geography. They don't appreciate that this is halfway or more than halfway around the world.
But around the world, in houses of God, families and friends of those involved in Desert Storm hoped this storm of turmoil would pass quickly.
Let not our hearts be afraid.
From News 4 Texas, this is a Desert Showdown update.
Good evening, I'm John Criswell. No word yet on whether Israel will retaliate in the wake of Iraq's latest Scud missile attack on the Jewish state. Iraq launched the bloodiest attack yet tonight, and at least one missile slammed into a residential area of Tel Aviv, Israel's most populous city. At least 3 are dead and 70 injured. U.S. Patriot missiles were fired to try to intercept the attacking Scuds, but one apparently got through the defense. We'll have another update in 1 hour.
Good evening, Dan Rather. Update of the showdown in the Gulf. For the third time since the war started, Israel has come under Scud attack. This time a missile striking a Tel Aviv residential area. 70 people injured. 3 elderly persons died of heart attacks. U.S. Patriot missiles fired during the assault reportedly failed this time to hit any Scuds. President Bush accuses Iraq of a brutal act of terror. Israeli leaders are meeting to discuss a response. In Kuwait, oil fires set by Iraq burned through the day. Iraq television showed pictures of 2 more American POWs, Air Force Major Jeffrey Scott Tice and Captain Harry Michael Roberts.
From News 4 Texas, this is a Desert Showdown update.
Good evening, I'm John Criswell. The Israeli military now says it is unclear how many Iraqi missiles were fired at Israel today. A military spokesman says the army's looking into the number of rockets after one avoided interception and hit Tel Aviv, injuring at least 70 people. Officials say 3 people died of cardiac arrest during the attack. The Israeli cabinet will meet later to talk about retaliation. We'll have another update in 1 hour and news at 10.